If you stand in the middle of Rome today and touch the stones beneath your feet, you are touching the path the Romans paved nearly 2,000 years ago. Walk through the Colosseum, you are standing right where 50,000 spectators once roared. Step into the Pantheon, you are stepping into a concrete dome from 126 AD, and it still stands today. Sit for coffee in a square, you might be sitting on the foundations of an ancient temple. In Rome, the past is not in a museum. It is right outside your door. This is a city that has refused to disappear. Kings have died here. Emperors have been crowned here. Empires have been ruled from here. The city has been plundered, abandoned, ravaged by war. But through it all, Rome still exists. What you're about to see will be unlike any historical documentary before. Using advanced AI technology, we have recreated ancient stone carvings, faded drawings, and crumbling ruins into vivid, lifelike scenes. You won't just hear about Rome, you will see Rome as it once was. This is the story of Rome. 23 minutes, 2,700 years of history. Let's start from the beginning. Around the 8th century BC, the first Latin tribes settled in this land. They chose this place for a very simple reason: water, arable land, and naturally defensible hills. Essentially, Rome was initially just a small trading post, but the Romans didn't want to believe that their city was born so ordinarily, so they told a different story, a legendary story. The story of two children, Romulus and Remus. According to legend, the twin brothers were adrift on the Tiber River, rescued and raised by a female wolf. Later, they were adopted by a shepherd and grew up strong in the wilderness. When they grew up, they returned to overthrow the usurper in Alba Longa and decided to build a new city in the place that had saved their lives. But they argued about the location. Romulus chose the Palatine Hill. Remus chose Aventine. The dispute ended tragically. Remus was killed. Romulus single-handedly built the city walls and named the city after himself, Rome. According to Roman tradition, this happened on April 21st, 753 BC, the day later considered the birthday of Rome. But that's not the whole story. Another tradition says that the Romans were descendants of Aeneas, the hero who survived the fall of Troy. He came to Italy, established a lineage in Alba Longa, and many generations later, Romulus and Remus were born. In this way, Rome considered itself a descendant of Troy, not an unknown village, but the heir to epic heroes. Ancient authors like Strabo even recorded other legends. The Greeks from Arcadia, or the hero Evander, arrived here before Romulus. This reveals a simple truth. Rome has no single origin. It is a blend of many peoples, many stories, and many memories. But from all those legends, one thing becomes clear. Before empires, before legions, before laws, Rome had a legend. And from that legend, the eternal city began. Following the legend of Romulus, Rome didn't immediately become an empire. For the next few centuries, it was just a growing town, a town with a king. According to Roman tradition, Rome experienced its first 7 kings. Beginning with Romulus, considered the founding king, he organized the population into tribes, established the first council of elders, and built the rudimentary defensive walls on the Palatine Hill. These were the first steps in transforming a village into a city. But Rome didn't develop alone. To the north lay a far more advanced civilization, the Etruscans. They had stone architecture, drainage systems, plazas, and temples, and gradually they exerted a strong influence on Rome. Later kings, especially Tarquinius Priscus and Tarquinius Superbus, are believed to have Etruscan origins. Under their rule, Rome changed rapidly. The valleys between the hills were leveled. A central square was formed, later becoming the Roman Forum. The first great temples were erected, and most importantly, a nearly invisible structure yet one that determined the city's survival, was built. The Cloaca Maxima, a massive sewer system, carried sewage to the Tiber River. While many ancient cities were mired in mud and disease, Rome had a drainage system. The city was cleaner, safer. The population grew rapidly. Rome did not thrive on mythology. Rome thrived on technology, on organization, on planning. The first cobblestone streets were built. The first bridges spanned the rivers. Markets began to form. From a small village, Rome gradually became the commercial center of the Latium region. But the concentration of power in the hands of the kings also created tension. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, was considered autocratic and cruel. Traditionally, after a rebellion by the nobility and citizens, he was overthrown in 509 BC. The Romans made a bold decision. They vowed never to let a king rule Rome again. Instead of a kingdom, Rome would become a republic. And from that moment, the city's history entered a completely new chapter. In 509 BC, the Romans did something almost unprecedented in the ancient world. They overthrew the king and vowed never to let another king rule Rome again. No throne, no dynasty, no royal family. Instead, Rome became a republic, a state governed by its citizens. Power was no longer in the hands of one person, but shared. Each year, Rome elected 2 consuls to rule together. 2 to check each other. Neither was allowed to be too powerful. Above them was the Senate, composed of noble families and experienced politicians. They decided on war, finance, and law. And throughout the city, 4 letters appeared everywhere. SPQR. Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the people of Rome. That was the symbol of the Republic. But Rome didn't just change politics, they changed the way war was waged. Instead of a temporary peasant army, Rome built a professional legion. The legion. Iron discipline, precise formation, year-round training. Each soldier was a soldier, an engineer, a worker all at once. They didn't just fight, they built roads, they erected bridges, they dug trenches, they set up camps. And wherever the legion went, Rome sprang up. Straight stone roads connected the cities. Aqueducts brought clean water from mountains dozens of kilometers away. Markets, public baths, and squares appeared everywhere. Rome gradually became more than just a city. It became a network, a system, a civilization. Then the wars began. First, the neighboring tribes of Italy. Then came a much larger enemy, Carthage. 3 Punic Wars lasted over a century. Hannibal once led elephants across the Alps straight into Italy. But in the end, Rome won. Carthage was razed to the ground. The Mediterranean became Mare Nostrum, our sea. From Spain to Greece, from North Africa to Asia Minor, Rome controlled almost the entire Mediterranean world. A small town on the Tiber River, now a superpower. But success also brought problems. Spoils of war poured in. Slavery skyrocketed. The gap between rich and poor widened. Politics became chaotic. Famous generals like Marius, Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar began to command armies loyal to themselves rather than to the state. Civil wars broke out. The Republic, built to fight tyranny, was torn apart by human ambition. In 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated, but that did not save the Republic. More civil wars, more bloodshed. Finally, a new name emerged, Octavian, the man who would later be known as Augustus. And with him, the Republic ended. A new era began, the Roman Empire. In 27 BC, Rome changed once again. But this time, there were no protests, no overthrow, just a very skillful transfer. Octavian, Julius Caesar's adopted nephew, returned power to the Senate, and immediately the Senate returned it to him. A new title, Augustus, the Venerable One. Nominally, Rome remained a republic, but in reality, only one person held power, the first Roman emperor. The empire began here. Under Augustus, Rome entered a period of stability that lasted nearly 2 centuries. Pax Romana, Roman peace. For the first time in history, almost the entire Mediterranean was ruled by a single government. No more constant warfare. Trade boomed, the population grew rapidly. Rome, from a stone city, became the largest metropolis in the ancient world. Over 1 million people lived in the city, an unimaginable number at the time. And to serve that enormous population, Rome built on an unprecedented scale. Stone roads stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers, connecting Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Aqueducts brought clean water to the city daily. Public baths, markets, libraries, and theatres sprang up everywhere. The Colosseum was built to hold over 50,000 spectators. The Pantheon was erected with the largest concrete dome in the ancient world. The Roman Forum became the political centre of the entire empire. Rome was not just the capital, Rome was the heart of the Western world. But the larger the empire, the more problems arose. The borders stretched for thousands of kilometres. The army had to defend from England to Syria. Costs soared. Corruption was rampant. Emperors were successively crowned and assassinated. The 3rd century descended into crisis. Civil wars, the economy collapsed, plagues, the empire began to crumble. Then a major turning point occurred. In 312, Emperor Constantine won the Battle of Milvian Bridge. Traditionally, he saw Christian symbols in the sky before the battle. He then legalized Christianity throughout the empire. For the first time, a previously persecuted religion became a protected religion. This changed Rome forever. The empire no longer relied solely on Jupiter or Mars. A new faith emerged, and that belief would survive, even if the empire collapsed. Constantine also made a strategic decision. He moved the capital eastward. The city of Byzantium was rebuilt and renamed Constantinople. Closer to the border, wealthier, easier to defend. From then on, Rome gradually lost its position as the political center. The city that once ruled the world was now just a shadow of its former self. Finally, the inevitable happened. In 410, Rome was plundered by the Visigoths. For the first time in almost 800 years, the city fell. The shock shook the entire ancient world. Then, in 455, the Vandals invaded, and in 476, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire was deposed. The Western Empire officially ended. But strangely enough, Rome didn't disappear. The city didn't die. It wasn't abandoned like Babylon. It wasn't buried like Pompeii. It was still there, smaller, weaker, but still alive. Because now, Rome wasn't just the capital of an empire, it became the center of something else, an even more enduring force, the Church. And a new era began. The year 476, the Western Roman Empire collapsed, the last emperor was deposed, and the city that once ruled half the world suddenly lost everything. No more emperor, no more legions, no more political power. Rome, the capital of the ancient world, was nothing more than a ruined town. The population plummeted dramatically, from over 1 million at its peak to just a few tens of thousands. The arenas were abandoned, the forums were overgrown with weeds, the temples crumbled, the stone columns were dismantled for building materials. Livestock even grazed in the middle of the ancient squares. For centuries, Rome resembled a ghost city living on its own ruins. If you walk through what was once the center of the empire, you will see no glory. You will only see broken stones and memories. But Rome is not dead, because a new power is rising. Not the army, not the emperor, but religion. Christianity. After Constantine legalized Christianity in the 4th century, Rome gradually became the spiritual center of the Christian world. Traditionally, St. Peter, one of Jesus' apostles, was executed in Rome. His tomb lies on Vatican Hill, and it is there that a great church was erected, St. Peter's Basilica. Gradually, the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, became the most important figure in the city. When the empire vanished, the church remained. When the emperor lost power, the Pope succeeded him. Rome no longer ruled by sword, Rome ruled by faith. Throughout the Middle Ages, the city experienced centuries of instability. The Germanic tribes took turns controlling it, the Ostrogoths, the Byzantines, the Lombards. Power changed hands constantly, but the Vatican survived, the Pope remained, and pilgrims from across Europe still flocked to Rome. They didn't come for the empire, they came for the sacred. Rome became the most important religious destination in the West. New churches rose on the foundations of old temples. The Colosseum became fortresses. The Roman palaces became monasteries. The ancient city was gradually reused, not as a political center, but as a sacred city. By the 11th to 13th centuries, Rome began a slow revival. Trade returned. The population gradually increased. Noble families built fortresses and watchtowers in the heart of the city. But Rome was still much smaller than it had been during the empire. No longer the capital of the world, only the capital of the church. A city that survived on memory and faith. But then, something unexpected happened. From the ancient streets and Roman ruins, a new movement began. A movement that would change the art, architecture, and thinking of all of Europe, the Renaissance. And Rome was about to shine again, not with legions, but with art. After centuries of medieval decline, Rome was still there, small, old, and full of ruins. The Colosseum had its stones removed to make way for buildings. The Forum had become a pasture for cattle. Broken temple columns lay scattered everywhere. The city that was once the center of the ancient world now looked like an open-air museum. But then, something unexpected happened. Europe began to look back at its past. They rediscovered ancient books, Greek philosophy, Roman law, classical art. A new movement emerged, the Renaissance, and Rome, with its thousands of ancient monuments, suddenly became a living treasure trove of history. The popes realized this. If Rome had once been the center of the empire, now it could become the center of culture and art. They started spending money, a lot of money. Huge projects were started. The old St. Peter's Basilica was demolished. A new basilica, larger, grander, was rebuilt from scratch. The St. Peter's Basilica we see today was born from this period. The enormous dome designed by Michelangelo, the expansive square planned by Bernini, a space large enough for hundreds of thousands of pilgrims. Rome no longer built amphitheaters, Rome built churches. And the greatest artists in Europe were invited: Michelangelo, Raphael, Bramante, Bernini. They transformed Rome into the world's largest art complex. The ceiling of the Sistine Chapel was covered with paintings depicting scenes from the Bible. Statues of David, Pieta, and Moses appeared. Squares, fountains, and palaces sprang up everywhere. The cramped medieval city gradually transformed into Baroque Rome, grand, dramatic, magnificent. Every street corner was like a stage. Every square was like a sculpture. During this period, Rome was no longer a military center, but it became the creative center of Europe. Artists, architects, and scholars flocked here. Pilgrims still came for faith. The nobility came for art. Rome came alive, not as an empire, but as a cultural capital, a city of marble, paintings, and light. And as it entered the 17th century, Rome had completely transformed. No longer a ruin, no longer a sad town. It once again became one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. But one question remains. If Rome was once the capital of an empire, then the city of the Pope. So in the modern world, what would Rome be? The answer comes in the 19th century, when Italy was unified and Rome was preparing to become the capital once again. For centuries, Rome was the city of the Pope, not an empire, not a nation, just a religious center. But in the 19th century, Europe changed once again. The Italian kingdoms began to unite. A new movement emerged, the Risorgimento, the movement for the unification of Italy. And among all the cities, Milan, Florence, Turin, only one name carried enough historical weight: Rome, the eternal city, the city that once ruled the world. In 1870, the Italian army entered Rome. The secular power of the Pope ended. Rome was officially incorporated into the Kingdom of Italy. Soon after, it was chosen as the capital. For the first time in over 1,000 years, Rome once again became the political center of a nation. Once again, the city began to change. New avenues were opened through the old town. Government buildings, squares, train stations, and bridges were constructed. Modern residential areas sprang up alongside ancient ruins. Rome was now both a museum and a living metropolis. You could ride a tram past the Colosseum. You could drive across ancient Roman bridges. You could dine next to a 2,000-year-old temple. Nowhere else in the world do these eras coexist so parallel. The 20th century brought further upheaval. World wars, the fascist regime, then Reconstruction. But Rome stood firm. The city continued to expand, continued to modernize. Airports, subways, highways. And at the same time, the Vatican became a small, independent state in the heart of Rome, the center of global Catholicism. Two entities, two histories, coexisting in one city. Today, more than 3 million people live in Rome. Tens of millions of tourists visit every year. They don't just come to see the sights, they come to touch time. Because in Rome, you don't need to imagine history. You step straight into it. One step is antiquity. One step is the Middle Ages. One step is the Renaissance. And right before you is the modern world. From a shepherd village on the Tiber River, to a small kingdom, to a republic, to the most powerful empire of the ancient world. Then decline, then rebirth through religion, then an artistic explosion, and finally it became the capital of Italy today. Rome never disappeared, it just changed, over and over again, for almost 3 millennia. And that is why it is called by a very simple name, the Eternal City, Rome.